Greetings, children of the night. Welcome to Your Own Will, a show about all things vampire and the supernatural in games, media, and mythology. I am your host, David Tveraas, game designer and vampire aficionado. Welcome to my house. Enter freely and of your own will. Today I'd like to talk about 3 upcoming vampire tabletop RPGs with a focus on their development, design philosophy, and my perspective on each. First, I'd like to talk about the Vampire the Masquerade V6 Alpha playtest. Then I'm going to discuss the Anne Rice's Immortal Universe RPG on BackerKit. And finally, I'm going to reveal some information about my Nightborn RPG that I am developing. Vampire the Masquerade is the most well-known and prolific vampire tabletop RPG. I've been playing Vampire the Masquerade for over 30 years now, and it has remained my favorite tabletop RPG that entire time. Recently, an alpha playtest of 6th edition of Vampire was revealed to the world, and I had the honor of playing it with the Whitewood Wolf developers at Gen Con. Vampire was fresh in my mind as I had just story told some V5 games at that same Gen Con just hours before I actually played that V6 playtest, so back to back, these things were easy to compare. I bought 2 tickets to the playtest, as I don't think a single playthrough of an alpha module would necessarily give me the full picture of what the game was about and how I felt about it. Personally, I feel you should playtest a game more than once to help rule out variables such as storyteller style, fellow player personalities and role-playing expectations, and atypical die rolls. So that's what I did. The first game I played was Story Told by Huddy, the community ambassador for World of Darkness. I was the last to arrive at the table and chose Ulfred the Nosferatu to play, mostly because I noticed that this character had a rat familius, and I had pre-generated a Nosferatu character with a rat familius for the players of the V5 game that I was storytelling myself, and happened to play right before I came to this table. I guess great minds think alike. I had a lot of fun with my first playthrough of the Not in My Domain scenario, which comes with the alpha. Full spoilers for that, by the way, coming up here. I did feel like the rest of the table, the other players, were kind of passive and apprehensive, hesitant to react and make choices, but that's completely understandable. It's a new setting for some of these players. It is a new addition for all of us, and we're all strangers as well. We just signed up for this one event at Gen Con, so I understand why. However, this kind of thwarted my plans as I wanted to try to remain hidden with Obfuscate as much as I could, and me having to open doors and like open boxes and do a lot of the heavy lifting was messing up with my invisibility. Um, and it's also Ulfred wasn't necessarily the best suited for strength related tasks, but I ended up doing a lot of that. The character Ulfred was particularly good at certain things. For example, he had a bunch of tools with him where he was suited at working with electronics and locks and other such devices. But I never happened to be in the room when that sort of thing came up. We ended up with a split party, and what happened was there was an opportunity to, let's say, disable a security camera, but the brew job was in there and just smashed it with their hand, walked right up to it, just crushed it. This was all happening while I was helping push a dumpster out back to the side to get into another entrance so that we didn't have to walk up to the camera, but things happen. Instead, I got to fight a white, which, at least I was able to sneak attack it. And then I skinned off a thaumaturgical sigil that was carved into it, which I then tucked into my overalls, which was pretty cool, and I doubt many players got to experience the encounter specifically in that way. The game ended with the whole coterie having to flee an army of hunters, which of course were alerted by the one character walking up to the security camera and crushing it. So it was an interesting way to end the scenario with us just running away. My obfuscate power did make that easy, however, though Huddy made me jump back into a burning building so that I was out of sight before I could activate it, but I succeeded on my rolls, so that worked out. The second game I played had Marty, aka Outstar, White Wolf's associate creative director, as my storyteller. Wonderful person. I let the other players choose their characters first and try not to spoil any of the story since I just played it the prior day. I picked Diane the Gangrel, former Hound, and the reason I chose her was because in the previous game that I played, nobody picked her. She was left on the table, so this was new territory for me. The game played out quite differently, which is what I expected. Diane was much more suited to be that first mover with high strengths and wits, which applies to initiative in this version. And she also had the bestial instincts, which made sensing the supernatural easier so that we were able to figure out what was going on quicker. This made progressing the scenario a lot quicker as well. The Ulfrid of this game got to use Ulfrid's tool skills to disable the camera, so we did not have that hunter ending I had in the previous game, but we did have to fight more wights as our drama accumulation, drama being a new mechanic, resulted in a heavy rain in the area, waking up those wights. This session resulted in a longer social interaction with the sheriff and his hounds, which is an event that happens near the end of the scenario. They just show up and demand to know what's going on and throw accusations at you, that sort of thing. I found this new version of social combat interesting, but it felt more like ROLL roleplay, as you're just throwing dice down to reduce their willpower pool, which is sort of like a health tracker for social interactions, then it was like true role play, where you would make, like I say, a convincing argument for intimidation, manipulation, or persuasion, and maybe like succeed or fail rather than trying to knock down a certain number of willpower dots, which there can be quite a lot in this game. So V6 is a new addition, and as I just mentioned, there's some new mechanics, some of which I don't quite favor after playing it at twice. Maybe I'll play it some more and change my mind about that. But right now, I'm not too hot about the drama system. It's kind of interesting. I know a lot of people are saying that like I as a storyteller can just make my choice to have certain events happen. I kind of like the idea of maybe having a reactive system where it can like fuel NPCs or certain hazards or environments based on what the players choose to do, but that can just be by choice. I'm not sure we need to maintain points, and I found that in gameplay it while spending drama was interesting, the storyteller could have just made up that thing to happen, like the rain coming down. That could just be something that they impromptu on the spot decided to happen to change the situation a bit. I'm not sure that drama points were necessary. I think it might actually slow down the game quite a bit, especially when we had to do some interactions in my first game. I think we might have not gotten to as far as we could because of things like drama, but also quickening. Now, quickening, you gain a quickening when you roll your dice and you succeed with a 10. You get, for each 10 that you roll on the die, you get a little token that you can either spend on your future rolls or someone else's rolls. Now, something bad happens if you get 5 quickening. It's in the rules. I haven't read that part yet. This is all pre me fully going through the rules. This is just my first impressions from actually playing it. I have read through the rules a little bit though, but yeah, you can use quickening to increase your die pools. Now, die pools is another problem that I'm having a problem with here because the way it works is you take your attributes and your skills and you add those together for whatever you're trying to do, whatever's appropriate. But then instead of a target number that you're going for, the target number you're going for is always 8. But what you do is you subtract the number of dice based on the difficulty of what you're trying to do. So a lot of actions will be common difficulties will be difficulty 2, difficulty 3. Something really impossible might be like 5 or higher. Something really simple, they might not even want you to roll or just be difficulty 1. So it was almost always two or three, but you would subtract that from your die pools. Die pools were usually between 3 and 7, usually with a specialty to try to get to 7. So they would say, okay, collect 7 dice because you have this giant die pool. Now subtract 3. Now you're rolling only 4 dice. Now hitting the target number 8, even with 4 dice, is kind of iffy. That's only 30% per roll. So if you roll like I would say the average rolls that we were rolling were like 3 dice. I would say half the time I just didn't. There was no successes. But luckily for most things, 1 success is enough. 1 8 or higher. I'm not sure I like that system, especially since there were times where I only had 3 dice and my difficulty was 3, and I didn't have any quickening, so I just couldn't do the thing. I had a die pool of 0. And I can see that if it wasn't these pre-generated characters and it was characters you like new innates that you made, there's probably quite a few things. I went through the character generator and it's pretty easy to have die pools of 2 or 3. And if 2 or 3 are difficulties, there's a lot of things you just can't do. Conversely, on the other side of that, the same problem I have this with the system is that if you have 4 or more dice, if it's not combat, you can do something which is called being overqualified, where you don't even need to roll. Now, like I said, you can roll 4 dice and very easily not hit any 8s. Try it, grab 4 d10s, roll it a whole bunch of times. Probably a little more than half the time you're going to get 1 8 or more. But it's probably a good number of times you wouldn't. So just why would you not take the, hey, I'm overqualified, it automatically succeeds? I think even if they were like raise that to 5, it might not. It doesn't. You're now like you're taking a lot away from the game, in my opinion. A lot of people are complaining about the fact that storyteller doesn't need to roll. I don't have a problem with that necessarily. As a storyteller, I often try to let my players do all the rolling. I would rather them roll a defense than I roll an attack. I feel like sometimes it can feel unfair if I just like grab a whole bunch of dice and roll it and just destroy the character. Um, uh, from their perspective, it's like you didn't even give me a chance. So I'd rather have them both roll both sides of it, their attacks and their defense, and just have like it be flat. But a lot of storytellers totally disagree with that. They're like, I have to roll dice too. To me, the role of the storyteller is more about making sure that the story is in flow and that every player gets an opportunity, rather than just telling my story and rolling a bunch of dice. Um, Now, there's also, if you do fail, there's a fallback mechanism called Deal with the Devil. And a Deal with the Devil is you fail the roll, but you really want to succeed. I was told that you can only do this once per maybe session. I'm not sure if that's what it is, or if it's per story or per scene or whatever. Um, but basically, you have to give up something like draw a point, similar to the next thing I'm about to talk about, choose your pain. Um, and you're like, okay, you can succeed, but you have to trade something with the storyteller. Um, I I like the idea of like pushing your luck and succeeding when they didn't. I'm not sure I like this one specifically though, because it works into these other systems like drama, um, and the way that they're doing the new humanity system. Um, but also this goes to hands in hand with like choose your pain. So if you make a failed roll and you don't make a deal with the devil and you've got ones on the board, some of the dice have ones, then it's a painful failure is what they call it. Painful failure, that's also what they would call me in high school. No, just kidding. But you get this list of things like gaining a beast, it's like losing a vitae, giving drama to the storyteller, um, and I'm not sure the reasoning given by White Wolf why it was designed this way was so that it lends more to player choice. But I think it's gonna, for new players, it's gonna lend to analysis paralysis. They're really like, well, what do all these things do? Should I calculate what's best for the scenario? And I also think when you give choices like this, that this also pressures others players to um, tell them what to do. And I don't like it when players tell what each other to do. Like collaborate, make a plan together. but like a more experienced player and a veteran player might know, like, actually, if I take 1 point of beast or something, that's actually not going to negatively affect us, really, because there's this other mechanic that just instantly makes it go away or something like that. It gets easily metagamed. You could say, well, if people want to role play, then they should choose to role play, but you're going to play with other people, so the mechanics should reflect the experience you're trying to create. Speaking of which, diablerie. When one vampire sucks the soul out of another vampire, gaining their knowledge and strength, but at great cost to their own soul. In the past, that would be a huge humanity violation, and also, it's hugely taboo. The current rules for that in the alpha barely have any negative side. It's like, well, you'll get some beast if you're not deep in the beast already. Otherwise, you get a whole bunch of experience points. If you dabblize them, even if they are of a higher generation than you, they could be Duskborn. You still gain generation points, so that you're becoming more powerful. I guess you'd call it lowering generation. And that it almost seems like there's no cap to it. Like it's like it's like, hey, good time for the Sabbat. We all get to diablerize. But it is the alpha. Hopefully they fix that, adjust that, or like give a story reason why we're now in free for all with diablerie. At least it kind of limits you how many times you can do it per day, because it like makes you like sluggish or puts you like in a day sleep if you don't roll high as for the final part. In fact, it even has it carries over the V5 thing where technically you can be possessed by the person that you diablerize. Um, but it has uh, it takes multiple failures to get there, and you can get an exorcism. I'm not sure what an exorcism entails to get rid of that. um and like the stains on your aura, though, those persist. But I just feel like mechanically this is like incentivizing that. Things that I do like. All right, that's plenty of things that I don't like. Things that I do love. I love the new Blood Surge. I love that Blood Surge can be used not just for your skills, but can be used to increase your discipline, so that it's almost like you have a higher discipline value. And that there's this list of discipline maturity where your disciplines become stronger the more points you have in it. So you can just temporarily act like you have a higher discipline using Blood Surge. That's a brilliant idea. I love that. That should be applied to every edition of Vampire the Masquerade. So there's tweaks, there's new disciplines, and there's also tweaks to disciplines. A lot of people were upset and scandalized that animalism absorbed protean. Protean's not its own discipline anymore. I didn't know what to think about this at first. I was like, what, like they're quite different. But then more reading into the fine print of what actually happened is there's this other thing called clan traits, where every clan now has more of a distinct identity, and some powers of disciplines actually apply to a clan. That I think that one's a bit of a mixed bag, because I think that's going to lend to some clans just like strictly being more powerful than others just from their clan traits, because technically any clan could get disciplines, but if one's using that discipline a lot more effectively, and that's a very strong discipline, it's going to be asymmetrical, which is fine. I like asymmetrical design. um in fact, I encourage that. I think Vampire is asymmetrical game, and so that actually is a positive in my book. The asymmetrical design, you might want to be really careful with that when it comes to tweaking each clan, though, so there's not just like clear winners. But yeah, so I like the animalism. There was an old picture, I forget which book it was in. I think it was actually used in multiple books, of a Nosferatu decapitating somebody with feral claws. So the fact that Nosferatu have animalism, and now that the protein power feral claws is in that means that Nosferatu get that. That's a pretty cool idea. Animalism is also, I think, the Zamitsi, or Shimashé, or however you want to pronounce them. They also have animalism, but they also have vicissitude, which is back. It looks like amalgam powers from V5 are out. That's passe. But now they have access to telergy, which is some sort of, I'm guessing, combination illusory illusions, because it's also something that the Ravnos have, but it's also an option for the Tzimisce to have, so maybe it's more elemental as well. I don't know how those two things cross, but it's interesting to have a new type of magic introduced, since Tzimisce used to have Theban sorcery. um, Now, the Ministry, formerly followers of Set, also used to have sorcery, but they would often use the path of corruption when they would use thaumaturgy. Um, and so what they did is they created corruption as a discipline. It's not magic anymore. It's just a discipline, which makes sense because it's sort of, the powers were always kind of parallel to like somewhere between dementation and presence. But making people more corrupt, doing things that they thought were evil or they didn't want to do otherwise, because they had apprehensions to doing it. So corruption's kind of a cool concept. I really, really like that. However, that means that the Setites don't have animalism, um, which is interesting because they do have some traits that are very animalism adjacent. And also, it's interesting that the Ravnos don't have animalism because they have telergy, and which I'm a big fan of this new animalism. But the Tzimisce have animalism and vicissitude, which is interesting that they have two shapeshifting powers at the same time potentially. But they get the choice of vicissitude or telergy. There's some other clans like the La Sombra that have choice of corruption, that same discipline that the Ministry has, or Oblivion, which it seems like Oblivion is a lot more less like Oblivion from V5 and more like a Tenebration from prior books, because Necromancy is back also. The Giovanni are back as well, which is cool. I like that. I like that the Giovanni are back. I'd be interested in what the Harbingers are up to and how the Hakata might have broke apart. The Beckoning is gone, which a lot of people are like, but you need to explain it. And to me, I'm like, it it's kind of like a cool meta plot point, but I think it's overdue being over. I think that's more of a V5 thing, and we need our elders back. We need to get back to the Camarilla Anarch Sabbat dynamic. I don't like everyone just hiding from the hunters all the time. I want these powerful conspiracy vampires to actually be puppeteering this world of darkness, and I think that's the direction we're going with this. I'm not entirely certain, but yeah, the disciplines sound great. The clan traits sound great. Please let me know if you have any questions about my thoughts about that. And the last thing is the Vitae system being both your health bar as a vampire and like your main power source. A lot of the lesser level disciplines burn your willpower, which is like your social health as well. Um, but your physical health being like the more powerful part for both blood surge and like higher level disciplines, I think is kind of a cool concept, since you would burn Vitae anyway to heal. It can probably get a little awkward if like you use a bunch of powers and then you have such little Vitae that you just get one shot. That might be a little bit awkward. But uh, as far as play style, because it didn't used to work like that. But I think it is an interesting design philosophy. Speaking of which, let's go a little bit into their professed design philosophy for V6. The professed game design goals White Wolf put forth was that this is a love letter to the storyteller system. They talked about how there's 14 clans that are made more colorful and distinct. The clan traits definitely make them more distinct and colorful. 14 clans being the 13 that you probably know, plus Salubri, and also Kata if they're clanless, so they're not counted in that number. So it's like 15 different splats there. I think you could play Thin Blood as well, but I'm not sure those rules are in here yet. I did talk about the disciplines. Their metaplot is supported, which I support that. I think metaplot should be back. In fact, when I applied to be the creative director of of White Wolf, which was a long shot. My pitch was that not only should Metaplot be back, but there should be a mega plot where everyone's game can influence the story, the ongoing story of Vampire the Masquerade. Which I had several methods of how that could work out, but they didn't buy my pitch. Because they didn't interview me. uh, Dynamic gameplay. So it's a shared native. Players are invited to shape the story, which is a great method for storytelling. I'm not sure that that works with the mechanics here. I like that you can give the player a chance to say, like what their like critical success, how that turns out, or how they want, something in their background to play out. Like there's a million ways to do that, but I think the drama system isn't necessarily conducive to that. I think it gets clunky and slows down gameplay. um in fact, all the negative things that I said earlier about certain mechanics, it's not because like it's change I hate it. It's that I can see how that can slow down gameplay, not add to gameplay. And even if you're like become very advanced at it, if you're implementing these rules, I think it will make gameplay more sluggish, and it has so far. But we'll continue to test. Play as self-expression, the struggle between the beast and humanity. Now I tried hard to give into the beast and become and go in frenzy, especially in the first game. The second game that I played, we were focusing more on the drama points and see what would happen. Interesting things did happen, but I'm not sure they were worth the system. But in the first game, we all of us were trying to lose ourselves to the beast, and we couldn't get there. I think the closest we got were like 2 points into beast. Uh, I mean, if we were really focused on it, maybe we could have got there, but we're still trying to play at the same time, like a natural flow of how we could try to lose ourselves to the beast. We were pretty aggressive. Um, so yeah, play generates conflict. I'm not sure these were generating conflict. I'd say these are ways to avoid conflict, like choosing your pain. um because you have that choice, you can game it in a way where basically nothing happens that affects the story. Drama, that's like if the storyteller has an opportunity to use said drama. But you can also choose to not give the storyteller drama. You'd be like, oh, I'll take a vitae hit, or a closer to the beast. Devil's bargain as well. Every choice has its consequences. Like I was saying, no, a lot of these choices end up not having consequences because of the way it's so gamified. In fact, that's well, the crux of it, though. This game's highly, highly gamified. It's just like, oh, of course, it's a game, but there's three words there: role, playing, game. I would say the design philosophy of this is very game. Focus on that third word. Plug and play experience. It's a perfectly serviceable game. It was a fun game, but it feels very gamey, and I think that's the design that they were doing here. Um, Now in the playtest goals here, we went over most of this, but I did notice that when we were playing, they actually had developers walk around taking notes. They had a pen and paper. They were taking notes on how we played, and like what our expectations were. Now I'm not sure that this playtest is necessarily the best way to playtest a role-playing game. um, I did also roll back in, I think it was 2017, do the V5 playtest. And there was a little bit of deja vu there because they kind of did what they did here, where they just piled on every single rule that they could think of that they were trying to add to the game, and just had you all play tested at once. I think a better system of testing out role playing games, which I use myself when I develop role playing games, I'll do an A/B test. I'll be like, let's test this mechanic with this group and this mechanic with this group, and then have a third group where they're added together maybe. But first I want to test them in isolation to see if they're fun on themselves alone. And if they're not fun on themselves alone, I doubt that mashing them up with a large pile of new rules um is going to make like, how do you know which one's not fun at that point? Yeah, sometimes, I mean, I think it's unlikely for two non-fun rules to be fun when you put them together. You can try that, But I kind of feel like that's what's happening here. Is maybe there is a fun role in there, but like the unfun roles are making it so that it's a slog to get to that. But it seems to be the standard. I mean, they did this in V5, and they cut a bunch of rules, but did they cut the right rules? I don't know. Um, Maybe people were complaining about something where that they just didn't have the experience with when they were playtesting it. Outburst, frenzy, and outburst rules. The only outburst we got, I think, was when um, we were able to reduce the one character's willpower by talking at it. Now, the list of social attacks, most of them rolled social dice, and this when we were doing this, my character was the gangrel, so my social dice weren't so great, but I did have an all right what was it, wits plus subterfuge. So I was able to I forget what they called it. It was like an not an outburst attack, but it was like chattering away at them, just like to confuse them, throw them off their game. So I had to come up. So basically, what that lends to is coming up with a way to fit that list of different types of social attacks. But then coming up with a way to word it for your character rather than role play your character, trying to figure out how they can get the best die pool on their social attack, which I didn't think that was very conducive to a role playing game. That's more conducive to a dice role playing game. And that's what it ended up being. And then, like, I couldn't even tell you what the other players were saying. I was listening to them, but it was very distracting. And I don't think they were quite hearing what I was saying because we were focused on, like, well, what's our best die pool? And that's very distracting from the experience. Um, but I think this really goes into what they're going for. I think they will take feedback and adjust, make tweaks, maybe slash some things, maybe change some things. And I think honestly, this is very promising. This is very well thought out. There's a great team putting this together, and I think V6 it's going to be different. Whether or not it's going to be a great game, we'll see. But I think it has potential. Now let's talk about the Anne Rice's Immortal Universe role-playing game. I was asking the creators of this game what the acronym for it is, and interchangeably you can use ARIW or IW. I'm super excited for this game. Now, it's not based specifically on Anne Rice's novels. Of course, those were a great inspiration for it, and the foundation of what it's based on being the AMC series Interview with a Vampire. Season 1 and 2 were called Interview with the Vampire. Season 3 is called The Vampire Lestat. Those three are out already. And there's going to be a season 4 called Queen of the Damned, which is going to follow the book with the same name. Um, I think they are integrating some other information from other books. This is a really exciting project. It's on BackerKit. I've backed it. It's being made by Renegade Game Studios, the company that previously made V5. Initially, V5 came out with Modifius as the publisher, but that was transitioned sometime uh, to Renegade Game Studios, and a lot of the books came out from Renegade Game Studios instead. I did notice that they were not really promoting Vampire at Gen Con at all, which was my first tip, uh, clue that there was something going on, and that's before they White Wolf decided to announce that they are publishing their V6 themselves, creating it in house and doing the full publishing. Um, Now that left a hole for Renegade Game Studios. They had an opportunity to do another vampire game. I was actually considering for a split second to pitch my Nightborn game to them, but they got this amazing property. I mean, Anne Rice is that's the mother lode when it comes to vampire properties. So I have I don't blame them at all for jumping on the opportunity for this. Now they've got some amazing developers on this project. Uh, they've got Donna DeVere, who's just like this RPG sorceress, just amazing person. I got to finally speak to her at Gen Con. Amazing individual, super passionate about vampires, super knowledgeable. And speaking of super passionate, super knowledgeable people, primary on this project is Rachel Wilkinson, who's done vampire shows and RPGs for like the longest, uh, just highest quality productions. I absolutely love her work. Um, hey out there, renegade people, if there's anything you want me to help you out on this project, I would love to. I would do play tests or maybe make some videos on stuff, release some information here. Let's talk Anne Rice's Immortal Universe. So this isn't just the vampire universe. Now it looks to me like you're gonna primarily play as vampires here, but this includes the entire AMC lineup, which is also the Mayfair Witches. Alexandra Daddario is amazing in that. And the Talamasca show, which was canceled, but they have a whole season out of that. And there's a lot of Talamasca stuff going on in the Mayfair Witches and Interview with a Vampire. So there's plenty to work with there. I hope they somehow like reverse course with that, either somehow out of nowhere, maybe make a different Talamasca story or continue the story they had in Talamasca in Interview and Mayfair. um I think I might be wrong here, but I think they've basically finished the book series for Mayfair Witches, so the next season's going to be some either new stuff or going to integrate with some other books, which is kind of interesting. Let's talk about the RPG here for a minute. So it's Interview with the Vampire. You could back some backer kit. I'll include the link to this in the description. Welcome to the Immortal Universe. Accept the Dark Gift. Now, in Anne Rice's world, your powers are called gifts. Um, uh, you have like what is it called? Like the Sky Gift, lets you fly, stuff like that. Um, which is kind of a cool way to do it. Yeah, here it says the AMC series Interview with the Vampire, Mayfair Witches, and Talamasca. I'm not sure if you can read that. Hopefully you can. Let me zoom in a little. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit. Make it a little easier to read. There you go. Vampire, Mayfair Witches, Talamasca, the Secret Order. Uh, One shared immortal universe, so it's all these worlds in one, which I love. Um, Blood, love, eternity. Gothic horror, suspense, and predation. Ooh. The need that drives supernatural creatures and the price they pay to survive. That's the blood. Stories of violence, temptation, dread, and monstrosity. Love. So that's romance, obsession, devotion, and possession. Well, I like that word obsession. Did you see that movie? Obsession was amazing. Probably my favorite movie. I was going to say of the year, but that might be my favorite movie of all time now. I love Andy Neveretti. And Curry Barker is a genius. Everyone else involved with that movie, of course, is also amazing. That was like, I consider that a perfect movie. A lot of people point out flaws with it, but I'm like, no, 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 you just don't understand it. Relationships between obsession makes a great vampire movie too, or at least super vampire adjacent supernatural. Relationships between vampires, humans, and witches. The humans being like the Talamasca, which is like, if you don't know Anne Rice, Talamasca is what they call their like not quite supernatural hunters, but the observers. If you know Vampire the Masquerade, is probably more close to the Arcanum than a hunter than any other hunter organization. Arcanum seems to be maybe based on Telemasca from Anne Rice's universe. Um, so I didn't know this, but a lot of people presume that Vampire the Masquerade was directly based on Anne Rice's work because there's a lot of similarities, especially when it comes to like Toreador vampires, for example. But from what I understand, the initial impetus for creation of Vampire the Masquerade was the movie The Lost Boys. That was the highest inspiration. Obviously, there's a lot of inspirations in that because I mean, each clan pulls from like a different genre. Um, but yeah, that's why you got the Bruja looking like bikers. And of course, Lost Boys drew a lot of inspiration from Anne Rice's work as well. So everything's kind of connected. We're all borrowing from each other and creating our own universes. But vampires in this universe, the Anne Rice's Immortal Universe, which isn't to say Anne Rice's works, but I think it's her son. I think his name is Christopher Rice. It's technically him in charge of this, of Anne Rice's estate, in charge of the AMC line, which is different from the books. Um, those are also a little bit different than Anne Rice's original works. If you watch the series, which I highly recommend, especially Interview with the Vampire and the Vampire Lestat. Vampire Lestat was an amazing season. I don't know how they're going to top it. It was quite amazing. The next season's going to be Queen of the Damned, so you got some Akasha action, which I think there's potential there to tell an absolutely amazing story about an elder vampire. The queen of the damned, an elder vampire. I mean, the queen of the damned. Um, uh, but yeah, it's gonna be wild, and I love that there's this RPG to try to represent that, and it's the excitement that we're having here. But this is about the burden of immortality, stories about memory, regret, grief, and the passage of centuries, exploring how the past refuses to stay buried, and how it forever changes a person. We all change. People like to say the phrase like, people don't change. Once they're this, they're always this. Um, Now, yeah, some bad people will continue to do bad things, but you also have to recognize we are always changing. I am not who I was yesterday. Who I am tomorrow won't be who I am today. All we are the sum total of all of our experiences, plus the whatever chemicals are going on up here. You know, so it's nature and nurture, and we, what what we choose today might be not what we choose tomorrow. But also at the same time, there are things that are define us. Some of us have the same addiction, but that doesn't mean that we won't express it differently tomorrow because of what's available to us in our life experiences. Look at these beautiful dice. I had a conversation with Rachel Wilkinson and at Gen Con. Lovely person. I don't think there's anybody possibly who would be a better lead creative on this team. And she mentioned this. Um, that the die 10s D10s, I like their shape. They're kind of a really cool like oblong type of D10. Gorgeous marble to that. Marble has a huge, well, two things. The original Vampire the Masquerade book had a cool green marble on it. That might be part of this reference, but also Queen of the Damned, Akasha, she was all stone and form when she was in slumber. So there might, and it was a darker hue like this. So this might be a double reference, which is kind of cool. Um, and I love the art on it. They kind of look like little coffins around the successes. I'm guessing those are successes. It looks like 8, 9, and 10 have a little coffin around them. Which, if that's true, 6 doesn't have a coffin around it. I see that. Um, that will mean that they're using a similar system to V6 with 8, 9, and 10s. I'm not sure, but that's what it looks like to me from this angle. Um, don't be afraid, darling. It won't hurt much. That's directly. Uh, I'm guessing Rachel wrote that. The Interview with the Vampire starter set includes everything you'll need to develop into the. And I might be wrong. There's a lot of great writers on this. A lot of great writers that I don't know about, and some writers that I do, but I'm not sure they want me to reveal they're on this project yet. Um, so there's a learn to play booklet, teaches you the basic, a scent of cloves and lilac. Okay, cool reference, cool reference. So there's going to be a New Orleans rule book. This is going to come up later because New Orleans is also the core setting of my Nightborn game. New Orleans isn't a primary setting of Vampire the Masquerade, but there is a source book for that came out a while ago. But this is something that's going to be a similarity between my game, which are my signature city is New Orleans. But you know, The Vampire Lestat, Interview with the Vampire, that is New Orleans centric, so technically they've got a bigger right to it than I do. But hopefully we express it in totally different ways. Um, Once you're ready to delve deeper, the Interview with the Vampire New Orleans hardcover will provide you with features to tell your own story in the Immortal Universe. Okay. I want to definitely focus in my game. I'll talk about my game later. Let's talk about this game. This is the section. The past is a mechanic. This is really cool. I really like this because that's how Vampire the Masquerade. I just talked about Vampire the Masquerade. This is how Anne Rice's Interview with Vampire, the Stat Chronicles, is written. There's a lot of flashbacks, memory, people, and unreliable narration. They really focus on this. They really focus on this in the AMC series. There's even a really cool scene where Lestat has scars on his chest, and someone mentions is like, "Oh, Louis didn't mention that your scars," and he's like, "Yeah, he likes to leave out little details. Like he got my hair wrong in his story." Um, so everyone is an unreliable narrator. That's a cool mechanic. Uh, so in the show, it's a narrative device. It's showing you that what you're seeing isn't necessarily the truth. What you're seeing is how someone is relaying a story to someone. Now that is such a cool RPG mechanic where what you just played through might not be what actually happened. Where that there there's so much opportunity there to it, not just an illusion, but maybe like down the line you actually change how it went down, for example. I'm not sure how that's going to play out here, but that's got a lot of potential. There's a million ways you can do that. There's a million different ways. So I'm super excited about this game with this flashback system. Gives players the ability to change the story in the midst of playing. That's pretty much what I just said, and I didn't even read that yet. Um, Players recontextualize the present. Flashbacks can be short cutscenes. That's brilliant. That's brilliant where you jump back and forth between timelines, and that can actually change how things go because it's like, well, he told you that's how it happened, but he lied. That's why the key is hidden here, you know. He said he took it with him, but he lied about that. He left it under here, you know, stuff like that. Little flashback change. So you get to play with time like that without powers. It's just that you're narrating different things. That's pretty cool. Rewrite mechanic allows the player's brief narrative control to change the scenes as they're unfolding. Brilliant, brilliant. Rachel, Donna, everyone else who's on this project, brilliant. This really fits the AMC series. Um, Three different damage tracks. That's interesting. Physical, psychological, and emotional. You don't treat your wounds, despair, torment. That's really fitting because the show is very deep into not only is there a lot of physical action, but yeah, people have that psychological trauma and emotional damage. um that fits this game. That fits this game a lot. Um Hopefully, we haven't played it yet. Hopefully it doesn't I don't have the same experience when I play this that I did in V6 where it just feels like people are just rolling dice to make a track go down, but this actually lends to roleplay. That's the thing here. Is that does make it difficult. If you're making multiple rounds of rolling dice, that can break the flow of role play. So, um, in V6, I feel like they need to tweak that a bit, and hopefully they have a system for that here, where your despair and torment isn't just like I keep on having to roll dice until you get to zero, because that made it seem too gamey. But we don't know the systems of this yet, so we will see. I would love to play test this, by the way. Emphasis on roleplay. Your character is defined by fascinations, the passions and roles to make them who they are. So, like I said, with Vampire the Masquerade, I said focuses on the G of RPG. This game, everything that I'm seeing so far, focuses on the R. This is a role playing, bold game. So it's based on the role play. Role. Emphasis on the R, actually. Emphasis on the R. Role. So you're this character. You have this history. You have this past. You have these unreliable narrations that you make more reliable as you use this flashback mechanic. You have despair and torment. This is a character you are playing. It's character first. So what are you waiting for? All you need to do is nod your head and open your heart. Follow the campaign. Uh, so this is definitely the corner of Orleans and Royal. You see all the beads on the top of the lamppost. Very, very New Orleans. AMC Filming Holdings LLC and Renegade Studios, AMC Plus. Brilliant. And if you're a VIP, you can get this card. I highly recommend backing this game. It seems really, really cool. I think it's a phenomenal alternative. And clearly, look at this. It's got D10s. They are focused on you, Vampire the Masquerade players. And if you've never played Vampire the Masquerade, well, it's an entirely new system, so you're not losing anything else that anyone else has. Like you're on the same ground as anybody. The fact that they're using D10s is definitely a focus on people who do know the Vampire the Masquerade, some legacy systems. Um, However, it's very clearly, different tracks that torment and all that. This is definitely a different take. Really cool, and you got some French here. Nice, nice. Fantastic. I recommend backing this, the starter set, and I am absolutely going to be playing this in the near future. Now I would like to talk about the role-playing game that I am working on, Nightborn. Let me stand up here and show you my shirt. I wore this at Gen Con. I don't know, which way do I turn? This way? I don't know if you can get that QR code. It doesn't matter. I'll make sure to include the link below anyway. I had this shirt. A lot of people did ask me about Nightborn at Gen Con, and those who did often got escorted to my laptop where they got to play the playtest, which you can also now play on Steam. Let me bring that up. So, Nightborn is what I call a video game first property. That means I'm developing the video game first and foremost, and there is going to be a tabletop component to this. In fact, because of how long it takes to get out video games, the tabletop game might literally come out first because it's easier to go through that life cycle and actually publish something. But there is currently already a pre-alpha build and play test for this game. If you go to the link that I'll provide, there is also a play test that you can access here. Right now, it's not quite in a demo ready state. I'm still crushing the bugs, finding and reporting and fixing stuff. It's a narrative driven game where you have a lot of conversations with people. There's all kinds of crazy creatures in this world, vampires, werewolves, things lurking in the shadows, of course, vampire hunters and zombies, and it's your it's inspired by Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines heavily, but also games like Vampire, non-vampire games like Deus Ex and BioShock. You can see a lot of influence to that as well. But let's talk a little bit about the RPG. Let's see if I could pull up some information here, maybe on the dashboard. So if you go to the Steam dashboard, you can see a lot of my notes on this game. And since the video game is very RPG inspired, it's actually pretty easy to translate the video game into a RPG. Now, what I have instead of like in Vampire the Masquerade, you have clans, but in Nightborn, there is a family line. I just call it a lineage. It's pretty simple enough. When it comes to powers, um, Vampire the Masquerade has disciplines, right? Anne Rice's Immortal Universe has the gifts, like the Cloud Gift, that lets you fly. In the universe of Nightborn, Nightborns have entitlements. It's more of a it's a different take on it where it's less about like a medieval mindset and a study of power, and a bit more of a these are like rights. This is we're entitled to these powers. They are things that are ingrained into our society and our blood. um, so it also has a lot of differences when it comes to things like factions and just the nature of vampires. For example, all vampires in Nightborn are magic in one way or another. They all have their own magical traditions, different sort of power sets. In fact, every entitlement has a component to it that is strictly magical. Let's say, what's a good example here? Let's go with Nocturne. So you see, these are all the different entitlements: Psyche, Carnal, Eternity, Dominion, Nocturne. I'll open up Nocturne. Uh, this is the editing format, so this isn't what you would see. But there's powers of metamorphosis. That's where you change shapes into wolves and bats. You got Umbral, which is like your shadow powers. But every single entitlement series will have a magical legacy. Um, and the magical legacy for Nocturne is Malediction. So that's a whole path of sorcery that is based on curses, hexes, inflicting poisons and diseases, fighting weak points. Now, because it's magic, it's not just the blood that you need. The other powers you can use just blood, but if it's a magical legacy, that means that you need like a spell component. For example, in the video game, you need an effigy doll, which you'll consume and crush to dust when you want to inflict something upon someone, whether you want to weaken them, sicken them, poison them, mark them for death, cause a pestilence, whatever spell you're casting. And this affects both living and non-living things. Like you could find a weak point in a cable and make it burst, or you can use it on a computer system and find the back door. Just a weakness in their defenses in the antivirus software. Uh, it's very modular like that, and applies to a whole bunch of different things. Um, yeah, so I'm building out this universe. I will be doing a play test as soon as I finish my documentation for this, for the tabletop, that is. And what I'm going for Nightborn is not what either of the two other RPGs that I have mentioned are going for. So to me, it seems like Vampire the Masquerade's really going for, they've got a big legacy system that they're trying to update and make more gamify, trying to take the best practices from a whole bunch of different other games and piling them on. So like a very gamey game. It does seem to me that Anne Rice Immortal Universe RPG is also pulling from the idea of Legacy Vampire, but making it more about the role that you're playing, very focusing on the immersion into the Anne Rice Immortal Universe specifically, with those flashback systems and the unreliable narrator and just the cool world that that's creating. So taking, not rebuilding the wheel there, but taking that framework that vampire RPG players know and applying it in a way that's a totally different context, that's very reminiscent of the wonderful, I'm not sure wonderful is the right word, but wonderfully written, but the dark and passionate romantic universe of Anne Rice's AMC plus Immortal Universe. Um, which I think is going to be, I think both of those games are going to be really, really cool. So, conversely to that, Nightborn, I'm actually experimenting with D6s because they are easily accessible to people. So, what I'm going for is maximizing ease of access, lowering a bar to entry, making it a game which isn't necessarily familiar Lore-wise, there's some familiarities, but when you really look into it, it's really funny. When a lot of people find about Nightborn and start reading about it, they'll be like, "What is this Vampire the Masquerade ripoff?" But not a single person that actually finishes reading the lore maintains that attitude. They're like, "This is a lot different." Because I'm taking the tact of I mentioned previously that Vampire the Masquerade was originally inspired by Lost Boys, and then extrapolated out to a bunch of other sources. Anne Rice's universe clearly inspired by Anne Rice's works, right? Um, my core focus was older tales, like classic Victorian tales, like Carmilla, like classic Dracula, like Powers of Darkness, the hidden version of Dracula that was translated to Icelandic, like all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And of course, like traditional mythologies and stuff like that. That's the route that I went to. So I want it to be familiar to people that don't necessarily know more modern. Now, I included a bunch of modern stuff as well, just like eventually a lot of Iron Rice was pulled into Vampire the Masquerade. Um, I like to celebrate it all, build on the shoulders of giants, just like everybody else did. But this game, the reason I'm experimenting with D6s is because I want it to be easily accessible. I'm making a very simple system, very simple progression, very simple character creator. My character sheet is, I think, going to be smaller than either of the other games. It should be unique. I'm hoping to try to make it as intuitive as I can, at least explains as simply and as succinctly as possible. I guess people will play test it and let me know where I need to improve upon that. Um, but I'm also experimenting with a cool mechanic where you don't normally in most games you will expend your experience points. Like you'll make your character sheet, you fill it out. That takes some time. And also between sessions, you also spend experience points. Normally you don't do that in the middle of the session. I'm working with a mechanic where when you make your character sheet, you put your name, maybe your lineage. Just you can fill out the whole sheet, but you optionally cannot fill out your whole sheet. You can leave it pretty much entirely blank, um, and just wait until that part comes up. You're like, well, hello, everybody. This is my name, right? That's something you probably decide beforehand, but you don't have to. You could change names too. Why not? I mean, people could do that in real life, right? Or just lie. But using your powers for the first time can be when you write down you have that power on the character sheet. It's a quick system where you can just start playing, and maybe you haven't decided what power will be useful yet. The reason I'm designing it like this is because I have played sessions where I had stacked powers, but they never came up. Like yeah, I had all these social powers, but the whole time it was combat. I had all these combat powers, but it was all about like magical puzzles. And so what were my combat powers for? So I'm designing it from a perspective that players are probably most likely starting off with one shots. So I'm making it so that you can actually have utility of whatever you choose on your character sheet. So rather than have to cross stuff out and change it, just don't even put it on your character sheet until you use it. You'll have certain powers that your lineage will have, and it's like, well, I was thinking about making a combat character, but clearly in this story, we're having a big social encounter. So now I have, let's say I'm a character who has access to carnal. I was thinking, initially I was going to be like brutality. I am brawn. I'm strong. I'm intimidating. Well, actually, I don't feel like intimidating this beautiful lady. What if my character had glamour? And then you put that on your character sheet, and then in future games, you're like, well, I used glamour before, I can use it again. And then you actually get utility out of it. That's the kind of thing I'm experimenting with here. So I would say that um, role playing game. I think the design philosophy of the Anne Rice's Immortal Universe is really focusing on the role, specifically the types of characters they have in that fantastic AMC show. I would say that my game focuses on the next word, playing, or the next partial role playing. It's about just getting into the game, making an experience happen, telling your story. It's about play. You just start playing, make sure that your abilities actually line up to what actually happens in the game, so that it's something fun and enjoyable. Um, and then there is the game, and I think that Vampire the Masquerade 6th edition is a very gamey game. Now, none of these are wrong ways to develop or design a game. They're all different ways to develop and design a game. In fact, all of them have all components. None of these are not RPGs, but I'd say that there's definitely emphasis on different components of it and design. In fact, maybe some of my systems won't work out at all. Maybe people are like, "Oh, this is so clunky, just writing it as we go." But I'd say don't knock it till you tried it. I've done some experimentation already, and it's worked out pretty well. And then you might have a lot of confusion. It's like, how's that going to work if you continue playing? Well, you get experience points, and then you spend them as you play. Um, uh, Again, don't knock it till you tried it. And it should be coming out as soon as it's ready. I'm not going to promise a date because I am so far solo making a video game at the same time I am solo developing an RPG. I'd love to bring people on, but that's not an invitation to solicit me. I need to get the video game in a state where it can get a Kickstarter so we can have funding to make the game. And I am just not ready to bring people on for the RPG yet. We will find a state for that in the future. Um, I welcome questions about my Nightborn RPG. There's a lot of material here already that I will link. Um, but I also welcome the interest. I'll also link my Discord in the description below if you have questions you want to directly chat with me or the community about. I have a pretty strong community, which is nice, which is surprising because I'm comparing myself to these giants. Vampire the Masquerade, a hugest, biggest game of RPG in the world. Anne Rice's universe, that's like the most well-known vampire thing other than things like Dracula, right? With this giant Renegade Games huge company combining with AMC. And then there's little me with my tiny little dinky rinky dink indie game that I'm solo developing. So the only reason I am putting them in the same video is because I'm just demonstrating the vast difference in design philosophy and what it takes into making a game at so many different levels, and how we all have this shared love for vampire games and lore. And so this concludes my review of the 3 vampire tabletop RPGs that I was going over. I'm quite curious which ones you're most interested in, which mechanics you are most excited to see, which things you actually might not be so excited about, and what you're playtesting. What are you playing now? Are you going to play the V6 Alpha? Are you going to back the Kickstarter? Or sorry, it's not a Kickstarter, it's a backer kit for the Anne Rice's Immortal Universe. Are you excited for my Nightborn video game or the tabletop version? Are you going to play both or either? Let me know. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Your Own Will. Go safely and leave something of the happiness you bring.